Situated in the middle of Umbria, in the green heart of Italy, the central part of the Tiber Valley appears as a flourishing and fertile area. The gently rolling landscape is dotted with villages and towns, witness of a past that is still intact and closely interwoven with its history. Here we are approaching Collazzone, a fascinating medieval village with breathtaking views over the wooded countryside. An ideal place for a quiet rest, and from where you can explore unspoilt nature in all her glory, as well as interesting traces of history and art. We enter the town through a gate in the well-preserved medieval walls. The focal point is Piazza Jacopone, named after the famous friar poet from Todi, who died here after a life of spiritual and literary endeavour. This is a good place to set out on a walk through the maze of medieval streets, which not only take us back in time, but also open up wonderful glimpses of the surrounding countryside. Close to the walls of the castle, we come to the parish church of San Lorenzo, standing on the site of the ancient fortress known as the Rocca. The facade is faced with local terracotta tiles and is embellished by a fine rose window. The interior has a number of significant artworks, such as a 14th century fresco depicting the Virgin with Child, and a richly decorated reliquary. The most important work is a splendid polychrome wooden statue dating from the 13th century, also depicting the Virgin with Child, one of the finest examples of the woodcarver's art in Umbria. A short distance from the village is the monastery of San Lorenzo, originally Benedictine and then Franciscan in the 13th century. The fine Romanesque style crypt dates back to between the 9th and the 12th centuries and has recently been restored. It is an intensely evocative place where history recounts that Jacopone died on Christmas night 1306. The village is an ideal starting point for interesting excursions in the surrounding area, where there are many traces of medieval history in a pristine natural setting. Now we are in the hamlet of Assignano, famous for its terracotta craftwork. The records show that this tradition dates back to the 14th century, and the workshops and kilns seem to come straight out of the pages of a history book. Massa Martana has a centuries-old agricultural tradition. The area also has a wealth of archaeological and religious remains whose origins stretch back to the Republican period of ancient Rome. The Roman conquest and the construction of the Via Flaminia around 220 BC led to settlements and building work in the area, which would acquire considerable historical importance over time. The scale of these settlements is shown by the remains of a Christian catacomb, the only one of its kind discovered in Umbria. Dating from the 3rd and 4th centuries and made up of more than 300 burial places, the catacomb proves not only the rapid spread of Christianity, but also the existence of a fairly large population in addition to the peasant farming community. Another reminder of the Roman age is the impressive Fornaia Bridge, erected in 220 BC, at the point where the Via Flaminia crosses a small river. Still in good condition, this single-arch bridge was built with massive travertine blocks, some of which still bear the letters and Roman numerals showing how they should be laid. There are some interesting places of a religious nature, such as the Abbey of Saints Fidencio and Terenzio, which dates back as far as the 9th century, when a community of Benedictine monks established a monastery here which lasted until 1300. Then there is the Church of Santa Maria in Pantano, located on the original route of the Via Flaminia. It is one of the oldest and most beautiful churches in Umbria, and the facade has a fine rose window dating from the 14th century, and there is an imposing square tower on one side. The interior is divided into 3 naves and has a number of funeral urns as well as inscriptions and decorated fragments from the Roman period. Particularly fine are the large Corinthian capital, the carved altar block, and a wooden crucifix dating from 1200, as well as wall paintings. We end our tour of this exceptionally beautiful area with a visit to the Abbey of San Faustino, set on a slight rise overlooking the valley. In the 1st century BC, there was a Roman villa called Villa Marciana on the site where the church stands. Around the year 1000, a group of Benedictine monks used the blocks of travertine stone from the ruined villa to build the abbey. It is dedicated to San Faustino, who is traditionally thought to have been a companion and disciple of San Felice, Bishop of Civitas Martana. The interior has a wide and spacious single nave. Near the main altar there are 2 sarcophagi, one of which may have been the resting place for the mortal remains of the saint to whom the church is dedicated. We are in the central part of the River Tiber Valley in the heart of Umbria, an area where nature reigns supreme. vying only with interesting traces of medieval history and art. Now we're climbing up to Monte Castello di Vibio, a tranquil and fascinating little town which seems to have stepped out of an illuminated manuscript from the Middle Ages. If the more famous Todi has been elected the most livable place in the world, Monte Castello can boast of a similar title, awarded it by a famous American anthropologist who visited the countryside around the town in the 1960s, describing it as a hidden paradise where life unfolds according to the rhythms of nature. The town is off the beaten track and for this reason has remained proudly reserved and elegant in its perfect medieval urban layout. Its name derives from the Latin phrase gens vibia, denoting one of the many families who, at the height of Rome's power, formed what was known as the proud colony of Todi families loyal to Rome. The recently restored Porta di Maggio, May Gate, is one of the entrances to the town. From here there is a splendid view over the Tiber Valley, and the gate building itself has a small museum containing manuscripts and documents, weapons from various periods, urban maps, church furnishings, emblems, and archaeological finds. The gates, the town walls, the castle, the churches, the narrow streets and the tranquil atmosphere make the whole town resemble a splendid theatre of the Middle Ages, with no reflection on other beautiful places in Umbria. And in fact the town has a real theatre. Of its type it is a little marvel. The Teatro della Concordia is a perfect structure in the Goldoni style, with stalls, stage, decorated ceiling and rows of boxes, whose main characteristic is that everything is in miniature. With just 99 seats, it is reckoned to be the smallest theatre anywhere. The Versione Valley is green from every point of view, and this is the spectacular sight that greets visitors arriving in Marciano, a small Umbrian town set in the heart of the Tiber Valley. The fertile countryside is made up of rolling hillsides and rustling streams. Marciano's central position with respect to Todi, Orvieto and Perugia made it an important military stronghold, as we can see from the massive Torre Bolli in the middle of the town. The long-standing artisan tradition in the field of brick and tile making appears in many areas, such as the old kilns in San Fortunato and Compignano, dating from the 18th century and in use up until 1950. Completely restored today, the kilns enable visitors to see how this craft was carried out, and there are working demonstrations in the summer. More information about this particular type of craftwork can be seen at the Museum of Brick, Tile and Terracotta Work, which occupies several rooms in Palazzo Pietro Marchi, belonging to the Bulgarelli family. Originally from Lombardy, the family held the town as their feud around 1120 AD. A document dating from 1274 names them as Counts of Marsciano. The museum has many examples of this craftwork, which was typical of the old peasant farmer community. There is also a fine late 15th century fresco of the Perugia school attributed to Pinturicchio, depicting an enthroned Virgin with child and angels, flanked by San Silvestro and San Rocco. The area around Marsciano has many interesting traces of the past, including several splendid castles, such as the castle of Sant'Apollinare, an elaborate building in the Byzantine style dating from the 11th century, named after the archbishop by the same name from Ravenna. Another jewel of the Middle Ages is the castle of Miliano, what remains of it, the central body, 2 arches and the cylindrical tower, situated on a hilltop with breathtaking views over the wonderful natural scenario of the Fersinone Valley. An interesting fortified village in the area of Marsciano is Spina, whose defensive walls encircle traditional 2-story dwellings with handmade cotto tiles, typical 15th century architecture in the Perugia style. We end our tour of this beautiful area by visiting the parish church of Cerqueto. The church has a very special fresco, dated 1478, depicting San Sebastian with San Rocco and St. Peter. This is the first work with a certain date by Perugino, pupil of Verrocchio and Piero della Francesca, and later Raphael's teacher. Set on a hillside in the Umbrian countryside, Fratta Todina is one of the small villages of the central Tiber Valley. Thanks to its mild climate and healthy air, for many centuries it was the summer residence of bishops, cardinals and noble families. There are those who say that the town, whose focal point is still the castle, is the ancient Tudernum, which Pliny refers to in his work on natural history. In other words, home to the legendary founders of Todi. The old part of the town consists of a street which runs through what was the ancient Roman castrum, with gatehouses at either end. On both sides we catch glimpses of the surrounding countryside. The parish church of San Michele Arcangelo was commissioned by Cardinal Altieri and designed by Giovanni Santini in the mid-17th century. The interior has a single nave with side altars and stucco decorations. The many artworks include a fine painting by Andrea Pollinori, dated 1612, depicting the deposition of Christ, a copy of a work by Barocci, which is now in Perugia Cathedral. The council chamber in the town hall contains a copy of a splendid fresco depicting the Nativity by Giovanni di Pietro, known as Lo Spagna, now in the Vatican Museums. The town's main building is Palazzo Altieri, again within the area of the Roman castrum. Enlarged by Bishop Angelo Cesi and by Cardinal Altieri, the palazzo reached the height of its splendor thanks to architect Ludovico Gattelli, who added the garden and a fountain with basins and elaborate jets of water. The entrance is on the main street, and we catch a glimpse of a fine courtyard with star-shaped decorations on the walls at the level of each floor. The palazzo contains an important gallery with 17th century frescoes of the Roman school depicting scenes from the Old Testament. A short distance from Fratta, at the town's highest point, stands the convent of Santa Maria della Spinetta, one of the oldest places in the region associated with the Franciscan order, dating from 1291. The convent has wonderful views over the valley stretching from Perugia to Todi. The cloisters dating from 1394 are particularly beautiful, as is the delightful little church leading off the cloisters.